blessed.
Yeah, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Basan, shall we start the session?
Sure,
Are
sure.
you okay to start now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great.
Good morning, dear students. It's our privilege to have here today with us Vasant Aditya Ji. Vasant Aditya Ji is a practicing advocate at High Court of Karnataka and the founder of Kritam Law Associate. He is also a market analyst, consultant, trainer, and a law teacher. He has to his credit several achievements in litigation and has also been a part of several landmark cases. He is a professional of formidable reputation in legal fraternity and is known for his deft handling of cases. He has championed the cause of minority, agriculturalist, and paramilitary, being a part of the cases of national importance. His work's experience is varied. He has worked as a researcher and a consultant for several international organizations, apart from being a project head for a study on behalf of Harvard University. He has several international papers to his credit and continues his relentless work in the field of research. He has authored a legal text and directed and produced a documentary on the Indian judiciary system. I welcome you, sir, for this expert talk session. The session is over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot. First of all, good morning and New Year wishes to one and all here. It has been a pleasure to be associated with New Horizon College for several years now, and I'm elated to be part of this program. And it goes without saying that this institution has been a pioneer in adopting new and varied, innovative techniques, teaching techniques for holistic development of students. And I must say thanks to Dr. Sheelan and team for their perseverance and assiduous work for the betterment of students. And today I've been asked to speak about a business post-pandemic, a sector-wise analysis, and we look at what happened during the pandemic and how each sector has been impacted because of the pandemic situation. And then we also talk about management ethics in corporate world and how that has shaped the businesses across different sectors. So I would want to touch upon these two distinct topics and correlate to each one of them. Let me begin on how the nation's economy currently fares following the pestilence or the pandemic situation that has crippled several segments of our economy. Closing at the last quarter, the growth went down to 3.1%. So what did the pandemic really do to the economy? So let's look at it from a holistic purpose. Everybody has faced a lot of difficulties, a lot of issues during the pandemic. So what happened at the economic level and how did India fare and how it is now? So let's look at that. Firstly, it was a global phenomenon that caused recession, which induced market instability. So it's not just one country, I would say, but it's a global phenomenon that induced market instability in every sector, excluding a few sectors like pharmaceuticals or essential commodities, which actually had fared better than other segments. The estimated loss until October 2020 was pegged at rupees 29.87 lakh crores, which is roughly about 420 billion US dollars. This has been the largest contraction of GDP ever pegged in the last several decades, and the growth was minus 24% for the financial year 2020 and 2021, which was actually negative growth. Also, what happened was unemployment rose from 6.7% to 26% in just a span of 3 months in the month of March, April, and May. So what stood at 6% rose to 26% in 3 months, and more than 45% of the households in India and middle and lower income groups experienced income drops to an extent of 50 to 60%. And there was also several people who experienced severe pay cuts, and it is estimated by one of the organizations, global organizations, that about 42 million people in India were pushed into extreme poverty, and the global figure stands at 150 million. So that is a huge number of people who have been pushed into poverty. In terms of supply chain, it strangulated, and initially there was a lack of clarity on what the essential commodities were and what non-essential commodities were, and that there was a problem with the supply chain, and government's income plummeted. I mean, the income which the government derived out of different segments in terms of taxes also plummeted down. And tourism was trampled. So if you look at tourism, there was restrictions on movement of people. So tourism was trampled, and hospitality sector struggled and collapsed. Agriculture might have seemed to have been initially insulated, but the farm bills and the consequential agitations have disrupted agriculture as well. However, fishing and forestry have fared well in the last 2 quarters. Consumer activity again was near to standstill, and there was a plunge in fuel consumption. I mean, to an extent of 30%. And primarily, I think the trade with China that every country had was severed, and this resulted in a problem of not being able to import certain commodities, because China stands as the major exporter or manufacturer of certain commodities. And as a result of severe trade relations with China, I think every country faced difficulties in terms of manufacturing. And also another aspect is you cannot separate or segment each kind of sector to look at, because each are so interdependent. For example, agriculture also needs fertilizer industry, and fertilizers need logistics or transportation. So when logistics and transportations are hard hit, so you can't expect other industries to sustain. So it is interdependent. Therefore, like every industry faced difficulty. We looked at also several governmental packages were announced. Atmanirbhar Bharat, we've heard of that. But the economy is indeed in the ICU, was in the ICU, as described by the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram. We also have witnessing a lot of progressive changes that are happening. And if you look at key sectors in the last quarter, I mean, if you look at manufacturing and construction, it actually shrunk by about 39.3% and 50.3% respectively. So manufacturing and construction has shrunk to an extent of half of it, 50%. While overall sector, the key driver of the Indian economy, like completely contracted by 20.6% in the last quarter. The core sector, however, there was a news article which was yesterday, which the finance ministry came out with, that the core sector also shrunk by 2.6% in the month of November. So the core sector, when I mean core sector, means it's the essential 7 sectors in the economy, which includes coal, natural gas, crude oil refinery, petrol and diesel, fertilizer, steel, cement, and electricity. So overall consumption of these core sector also shrunk by 2.6% in November, which means that the economy is still dawdling, it's still crippling. It would need a lot of interventions in terms of governmental initiatives and packages, especially to small and medium-sized enterprises, which would need support or hand-holding support, as the Reserve Bank of India's former chief Raghuram Rajan said, that the need of the hour is not support to the big and large industries which can sustain, but to industries which are small and medium enterprises or MSMEs or cooperative societies, which need revival and packages and immediate inflow of credit to their thing. And also the Reserve Bank of India came up with several policies in terms of moratorium period announced for small and medium enterprises. However, there have been difficulties in some of the banking sectors as well. Moratorium being one aspect, and also waiver of loan in terms of agricultural loan was also proposed, which has been implemented, but it needs more impetus. The government should take more responsibility, and it needs more progress. There are indications of revival, especially with manufacturing, and real estate is picking up. If you look at real estate in the last 3 months, it's been slowly picking up. Despite government initiatives injecting funds in critical sectors, the economy needs ample time for revival, owing to the fact every sector is interdependent, and more specifically dependent on logistics and shipping, which was worst hit during the pandemic. There is a 16% increase in FDI inflows, but the government's role in terms of implementing the policies and bootstrapping MSMEs and and SMEs and startups are important. So, which is good news, which means that in the last 3 months, we've seen a lot of increase in foreign direct investments and foreign institutional investments that has crept inside India. So, which would definitely help and benefit small and medium-sized enterprises. So, the economy is surely recuperating, but immediate governmental intervention is an imperative. So this is an overall bird's eye snapshot and overview of what happened during the pandemic and what is happening right now. So if you want me to recuperate or summarize the entire thing, I would say that economy again is dependent on agriculture, which is again they're facing a lot of hurdles with regard to the farm bill, and there is also manufacturing and construction being crippled. So it needs a lot of impetus, a lot of policies which needs to be formulated and also implemented, not just having the policies in place but also implementing them, and ground level grassroots level work is more important. Decentralizing these packages, because there were huge policies that were announced in terms of Atmanirbhar Bharat, running into several lakh crores, but the beneficiaries are still struggling. And if you look at the GDP growth as well has plummeted down. So which needs a lot of institutional and governmental interventions. So this is about it, and before I move on to the next topic, which is management ethics in the corporate world, does anybody has anything to say or any questions in this regard?
They're pretty silent today, Vasant. Yasir Sharif, if you're speaking, ask a question. We can't hear you.
No, ma'am. I said no.
Okay, fine.
Saturday morning is usually.
We can continue.
Yeah. Any questions, anybody?
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Am I speaking to Muni Prakash?
Yes, sir.
Yes, tell me, Muni.
Sir, we can print more money to survive, sir.
I didn't get that.
For excess amount print.
We can?
To get economy, sir,
Mm-hmm.
we print more money to survive.
Print more money?
To survive.
Print more money, is it?
Yes, sir.
That's
From RBI.
That's illegal, Muni. You can't print it yourself.
Not ourselves, sir.
See again.
For RBI.
RBI. See that is
For
again
country growth, sir. For country growth.
for country's growth. So it doesn't work that way. So what happens? How does a country print money? It depends on the gold bullion value and the cash reserve ratio in the Reserve Bank of India. So you can't just go on printing money and circulating it. So that would actually result in an inflation.
Okay, sir.
So you can't just print money to sustain. But I would also want to make another important point here that
Sir, is there any choice to increase our wealth, sir, country's wealth?
see, one is I think the government also initiated Make in India a program. The concept of Make in India was also Atmanirbhar Bharat, who said that you need to be self-reliant and self-dependent, and rather than depending on imports or exports, being more self-reliant is one thing. So the one way, if you look at to increase economic growth, we need to be sustained ourselves. We need to sustain ourselves in terms of supply chain or in terms of demand for a particular product. So I would say that giving more preferences to domestic products and buying out domestic stuff would, local made goods or small and handicrafts.
FMCG.
Could be, yes, that is one way. But see, India until the 1991 was a socialistic economy. So if you look at the history of it, until 1991, we were more socialistic, and all these sectors were insulated and protected by the government as such. It was regulated heavily by the government. So any person wanted to start up anything or any inflow of credit into any sector required the permission of the government. It was termed as license Raj. So you need to get a license for everything for manufacturing. So it was a difficult aspect in the 1991. But subsequently, what happened was the liberalization or the opening of the economy. I think a lot of money came into India, and the markets were opened up. For foreign direct investment came in, foreign institutional investments came in. A lot of multinational companies start up shops in India. So, for example, if you look at prior to 1991, we never had these foreign brands, right? We never had Nokia, we never had Samsung, we never had Coca-Cola or any of the foreign brands. So all these things came into India post 1991, wherein we were signatory to the GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, that is the World Trade Organization, subsequently made into World WTO. So all these things happened post 1991, and subsequently the economy was more globalized. There were a lot of things that are happening in the global platform. So I wouldn't say globalization is bad. I wouldn't say globalization is extremely good, but we need to balance it out, because this is a time where we can't sustain independently. India is a labor-rich country. We have a lot of resources. If you look at history, we've been, if I have to quote Shashi Tharoor, India's contribution to the GDP in the late 17th century was 23%. After the British left us, it was only 3%. So the British took away a lot of resources, wealth, and all the things from India. But
Precious things.
we need to focus more on agriculture. We need to focus more on domestic products, on exporting Indian products, and also importing lesser agricultural commodities. For example, if you look at the last 5 years, the government of India has imported more wheat from America than producing it in India. So which is again, there's an imbalance of payments in terms of export and import, international export and import. So we could have, produced more wheat in India and hoarded it in the Food Corporation of India warehouses rather than importing it from. Sometimes we buy things unnecessarily because the West or some other countries forces us to buy it. So we can have
clothing.
Yes, we can have stricter, more regulated foreign relations or treaties, wherein we can say certain things are, for example, if you look at what China is doing, China would import only things on what it needs. Though it is, positioned as a communist country, but I would call it a neo-communist country, because it's capitalist whenever it wants. It has Walmart, it has McDonald's, it has everything what it wants, but it's neo-communist. In terms of preserving its domestic market, it will be very conservative and communist, but in terms of trade and investment, it is highly capitalistic. For example, if you look at the foreign direct investment of China, it's the highest in African countries or other developing countries. China would invest in Africa. So India should also do that. India should also start looking at foreign direct investment in other countries, or we need to have more policies that would stimulate domestic growth. So buy in India is one thing, make in India is another thing. Agricultural impetus is very important, and I would say it needs cooperation from a lot of people, and the government's will to change the poverty can be eradicated, but there has to be a will from the ruling class. The ruling class should start thinking about it, because they don't want certain things to change. Any other questions?
So, morning.
Yes, morning.
Sir, we are seeing that for the past few months, the stock market is rising.
Yes.
and it's still rising.
Yes.
And how that will help the growth of the economy of our country?
See,
Will that be in a good way?
the stock market is a speculative market. When I say speculative market, it is purely instinctive behavior of a human nature based on any contingency. So if there's something like panic buying, remember during the pandemic, they said that the shops will be shut down shortly, and then everybody rushed to the grocery store and everybody picked up everything whatever they wanted and stocked it up and hoarded in their house. So that is panic buying. So the stock market exactly functions like that. So when you say that a new streak of coronavirus has hit UK, so if you look at the stock markets, it immediately plummeted down, and then people started immediately buying a lot of stocks. So the stock market and the economy in general are sometimes unrelated or correlated, less related. So basically what happens is people are afraid and scared, so they go invest a lot of things. For example, if you look at investment in real estate has increased, investment in gold has increased, and very ironically that in investment or purchasing in automobile sector has increased in the last 3 months. So people have actually gone out to spend on different things which they never did. So that is good in terms of economy. Stock markets rising is a good thing, but again, this public money goes into the companies, and how these companies fare is again dependent on the development of the economy. So it's a chain. So public money getting into stocks dependent on the company's profit, the company's profit dependent on the tax being paid to the government, and that again the tax benefit coming to the consumer. So it's a chain of things. How efficient is this is a question that we need to think about, because we invest in the number of people investing is again less. The companies faring well is also again minimal. Companies paying taxes again filtered down, and how much of these tax benefits are coming back to us is again another question. So I would say that definitely stock market increasing is beneficial as an investor, as an individual, but if you look at economy at large, I would say it's very minimal. It's a very trickling effect.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Stephen.
So,
Yes.
so just now in the article I read that Google is investing in India for making it digital,
Yes.
to make India digital, and even Reliance Industry has taken some steps they sold their stakes to Reliance and Facebook. They sold their stakes to Google and Facebook also
Right.
to make it just digitalized. Okay, so what you thought, in India still many of the population is more than 30% or maybe 40%. Population still don't believe in digitalization, means they don't
Right.
prefer
Right.
to do the transaction digitalization of something. Still they prefer in a manual way,
Right.
right? So what do you think that where India will go? And so is a benefit for that, or it will
Yes. See,
go down something?
there are two aspects to it. One aspect is digitalization is inevitable. Technology is something which we cannot do without in the next few years, 5 or 10 years. For example, let me give you an example of how technology players like Uber and Ola came into being. In the beginning, when they set foot into the Indian market, people were skeptical. They thought, whether people would start using technology. The number of people using internet was low. The bandwidth of internet was low. The number of people with smartphones were low. But if you look at the last 2 years or 3 years, several million users have been included into the technology bandwagon. So if you look at that, I think now they have fared fairly well, and people are adept with technology. So it's the situation or contingency that forces them to use technology. For example, when demonetization happened in several years before, people shifted. Paytm was not used much, but if you look at after demonetization, everybody has a UPI. Everybody has Google Pay or Paytm or Phone Pay or something of that kind. So there are certain conditions which force people to change to technology. So investment in technology, again, it's inevitable, especially with big wigs like Reliance, Google, and Facebook, though they are under the scanner of the Competition Commission of India and the Antitrust Forum in America. There is a lot of things which is happening in terms of investment in artificial intelligence, in terms of data management or big data, of that matter of fact. So there are a lot of things happening. So investment in technology is inevitable, and though India is still not adept, or still not geared up for technology, I think the percentage is slowly increasing, and you'll have to look at it as a separate market. So how does people, like, if you look at analytics, how they look at internet shopping is they look at it as a separate market in itself. They don't look at it as one large chunk of market. They look at internet shopping or online sales as a separate market in itself. There are several things. For example, in the pandemic, I think online shopping shooted up. Everybody started using Donzo, Swiggy's, or something or the other in terms of purchase thing. So that actually you cannot stop it, and it will become a norm for the next new normal. So which means that you cannot do without technology, and companies investing in technology, they rightly do so. But there are issues with data privacy. There are the issues with abuse of dominance by these companies, especially Facebook and Google, who face antitrust or anti-competitive suits in America and in Australia. These companies have been accused of using their dominant positions to make the market suitable for them and to make more profits. So it's anti-competitive practice. So you can't stop these companies, but there are several things that especially in America, Facebook has been slammed with a fine for using abuse of dominance. So that I think pretty much answers your question. Technology is inevitable, to sum it up, and investment in technology, yes, artificial intelligence, a lot of things happening, and those small percentage of people are currently using technology, but I think there is a lot of potential for people getting into technology. So it's growing. If you look at the number of sales of cell phones, smartphones, the network connections, bandwidths are slowly increasing to a lot, and we are in the age of 5G now, not 4G. So technology is inevitable. I hope that answers your question, Harish.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you.
Any other
Good morning, sir.
questions? Yes, morning, Ajay.
Sir, actually, my question is that is the government taking a good step of making all the sectors private and selling all of it shares to the private?
You mean privatization of the governmental departments?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There is a huge trend for disinvestment in public sector companies, and privatization is definitely being done on a large scale than the previous government. So if you look at what happened in this financial year, Air India has been sold out. I mean, everybody knows about how Air India performed. It had a huge debt, though there are several issues with Air India, but government has decided to let go Air India, which stood as a symbol of Indian aircraft since the time of J.R.D. Tata. So disinvestment is happening. All the public sector companies have been losing out slowly to private segments. There are pros and cons, definitely, because, for example, if you look at defense manufacturing, arms and ammunitions have been completely outsourced to private sector now. So if you look at that, several factories in Gujarat, several factories in Madhya Pradesh have taken up manufacturing of defense ammunitions. So again, that there is a lot of privatization in that aspect. And several sectors, they've opened up foreign direct investment 100%. Like, for example, telecom sector is open 100% now, and you have agricultural commodities as well. A lot of things have been opened up to the public market. That is also something which is of concern. So private players, again, if you look at, if you ask me if privatization is good, I would say it's good as long as it is regulated. What happens is the private companies only function, the only motive of a private company is profit making. So if you give a profit making company the function of a state, they would not look at welfare of the subject. That is why there is a conflict. There's always a conflict between private companies and the welfare of the people. So you need a lot of regulation. So you cannot do away with privatization. It's very important. The government is very open to privatizing a lot of things. For example, water supply and water management in certain cities like Delhi, they want to privatize, and they want to privatize electric supply is privatized already. So privatization has happened in every sector. There is nothing which is left out. For example, if you look at only defense, atomic research, and a few other minimum sectors are not privatized, but also there are also privatization in defense. For example, defense manufacturing has been privatized. So if you ask me if it's good, I would say it's not really great, but we need to regulate it. We need to ensure that there is more welfare to people, especially in terms of tax collection and how these taxes have been used for the welfare of the public. So we need to rethink.
That's only, sir. Means sir, actually, if then sir, what is the use of paying tax when actually we will not be able to use the government bus and government resources?
That's exactly the point, Ajay. Exactly the point when I said that privatization is not going to help. That is a problem. So privatization is definitely a pernicious thing, but we need to bring in. It again depends on what the government thinks and how policies have been made and how these laws are implemented. So privatization is you cannot do it without it. You need privatization, but we need to regulate it. To what extent? So, but if you look at the last 3-4 years, a lot of government facilities have been privatized. If you look at Karnataka, the Kudremukh iron ore plant is privatized. I mean, disinvested. Disinvestment is happening in the Karnataka's sector of steel management. So with that, I think we need more policies in place which would be more beneficial for public than we having something for the pros or for the progress of a few multinational companies. Any other questions? Do we have any other questions, or should I proceed with the next part of the topic?
Yes, sir, you can.
Yes, so I think the next aspect which I want to talk about is management ethics in corporate world. So when I say management ethics, the word ethics is derived from the Greek word ethos, which means the character of a person. So what a person is, that is ethics. So how does a person behave in a certain situation is what defines what he is as a character, as a person, and that is ethics. So as far as I am concerned, I think economic offenses, or white collar crimes, are most heinous and pernicious to the society rather than petty thefts, and therefore it is important to have ethics in every aspect of governance and every aspect of corporate management. Ethics is again a study of how what is good and what is bad, and in terms of decision making of certain things which is beneficial for everybody. So that is ethics, and managerial ethics is a set of rules and regulations within the organization that defines what is wrong and what is right. So this is broadly what ethics means and corporate ethic means. So how is a company defined as being ethical or non being ethical? So So that is very important. So that defines what the company is, that defines who the management is, who the employees are, who the stakeholders are, and how the company progresses or profits. And it also defines on how people invest in that company. So one of the major factors why people invest in a company is how ethical it is, or how transparent and accountable the company is. So that is an important aspect, because let's assume that we invest in certain stocks and shares of certain company. What are the things that we look into? We look at, okay, is this company good enough? Is it a private limited? How old are they? What are their nature of service and products or service? What is this company into all about? How long they're there? Will they be in the market? Have they been blacklisted by somebody else, by ASSOCHAM or NASSCOM? These are the things that we look into. So ethics is one primary thing that decides who the company is and what the company is all about. So how to improve ethical behavior is in terms of management. The first thing is the management should be ethical. Only when the management is ethical, they can expect their employees to be ethical. So you can't have double standard rules, one applying to yourself, the other applying to your management, to your staff and employees. So the first thing that being ethical is that the management should be ethical. So now that leads with another question. Some of the students sometimes ask me, what is the benefit of being ethical? Why should we be ethical? Why should we be good? Why should we be with integrity? All these things they ask about. But the answer to it is very simple. There are two things that that would be the answer for a twofold answer. One answer is, being ethical, you don't need to manage a lot of lies, point one. And second, the company definitely progresses and profits more on the long run. For example, let's assume that you go buy a product and you were cheated by the company. Will you buy that product again? Definitely no. Which means that again you will go tell your friends that don't buy this product. They're not ethical. They're not good. So that is a chain of reaction. The negative comments are more widespread than the positive comments. So if somebody if a company is good, probably you would go buy it and then tell your friends. So that helps you better in terms of long run and in terms of better profit. So first thing is, be ethical yourself as a manager. All of you would become managers, or you'll have different aspects of management which you're facing in each of your life. The second one is also provide training on ethics in corporate. I mean, you can tell people about it as manager, that being ethical is very good, and establish a code of conduct. So many of the companies that I visit, I see that they don't have employees handbook or code of conduct, which is very important. So what is this employees handbook or code of conduct? It would say that what an employee is responsible for, what his roles and responsibilities are, and what are the liabilities of that particular person, what are the number of holidays he's entitled to, what is the method of grievance redressal. All these things are essential part of the employee's handbook. So that is important, and you need to train people on being ethical, and how you handle people also makes an important aspect of work culture. For example, if you people are HR managers, or you hold a high position in the company, so if you treat one person with ethical standards and the other without ethical standards, there would be a disruption in work culture. They would presume that the company is not ethical. So there has to be an equal footing on which all people are treated with, and the law should apply to everybody. The policies should apply to everybody, and firstly it should apply to the management. You can't say that management is exempt from doing certain things. So example, let's say that there is a case of harassment of an employee, just because the person is from a community which has been oppressed. You treat him with a different standard, and if you treat another person with a different standard, then it sets a negative work culture in the company. So that is very important. You need to establish these code of conducts, and you need to make sure that it's applicable to everybody, and as said by people, it should not be just done but also seen to be done, which means that you need to act also in a way that justice is done to everybody. So again, the next thing what I want to talk about is ethical leadership, which means that ethical practices is not just about talking about it, but also doing it as a leader. So if you're a leader or a team leader, you need to first stick to these code of conducts, and managers must be leaders and role models. And another thing that you can do is you can incentivize people who are being ethical and honest, and reprimand people who have indulged in unethical practices. So this is very important as managers and leaders. And ethical decision making is another important aspect that you can talk about in a company. So how does a company decide? So there has to be a process, and there has to be an ethical decision making process that you need to adhere to. So how do you do that? The first thing is, what is the outcome? What do you want to do? And then deciding on the alternatives that you have in a consistent manner and with ethical principles. And then recognizing that there is an ethical question. If I do this, what will be the consequences? If I do this, what will be the consequences? So you need to look at every scenario, analyze every scenario and see what would be the consequences. So the first thing is looking at it from the perspective of what the consequences or outcome is. So first look at the outcomes and then get back into, is the decision right? And then test the options and then make a choice. So in terms of company, you will have to be ethical in terms of decision making. And how do you do that? First look at the possible outcomes, what are the results that you expect, what are the alternatives, and arrive at the question, the ethical question. Is it right? Will it affect somebody? Will it affect a lot of people? Is it right for the company? Think of all these things, arrive at all these things, and then go ahead and act on the particular option that you have made. And you need to understand the consequence, reflect the choice that you have made, and act on the option only when you're very sure that there is a thing. So that is all about management and ethics, corporate ethics. And if you look at would you if you ask me if all the corporates are ethical, I would say no, definitely not. All the corporates are not ethical, but there are corporates which have been ethical to a certain standards, and they have definitely fared better than some of the other peer companies. For example, if you look at companies in the Western world are known for the use of anti-competitive practices like abusive dominance and competitive cartelization of certain markets. But some of the companies in welfare countries like Switzerland have been using mechanisms and measures to have more ethical workplace, and they have fared better. So that is something which is very important, companies being ethical and thing. But the increased competition has been forcing companies to indulge in unethical practices. If you look at examples of Tata, and people usually ask me question, do you prefer Tata or do you prefer Ambani's? I think at some point everybody would say Tata has been an industrialist. And he has remained in the company has remained as upholding ethical principles. The company which always upholds ethical principles. So Tata has always been that. So with this, I would say that ethics and integrity is very important for a company's progress, and integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody is watching you. So it is very important for companies' progress. So do we have any questions on corporate ethics?
Nothing, sir.
No questions?
No, sir.
Anything else anybody wants to tell?
sir.
Nothing else? So should we conclude then?
Yes, sir.
I think your management should respond.
So I think students are not having any doubts, sir.
Okay, so we
We can go ahead.
yeah. So that's about it. I think I'm pretty much done with the topics. So if there are any questions or anything else, I think we can address them now.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, morning.
Sir, my question is a little off topic. I'm sorry for that.
Sure.
So right now in the first part you mentioned Dr. Shashi Tharoor's statement about the GDP, sir.
Yes, yes.
I have watched that speech and it was one of the interesting debate I've ever watched.
Right.
So one question always lingers in my mind after watching that speech. Is it practically possible for British to pay reparations to India? If it does, what will it affect our economy, sir? Does it affect our economy in any way?
See, it's a very highly debated topic. I mean, paying reparations, as you say, is highly impractical for the reasons that, at least as I think if you watch that speech fully, and if you read the book Era of Darkness, he would have said that the apologists say that paying money or reparations in terms of money is very important, but I think it is more about moral apology or moral reparations, like rather than monetary compensations that India deserves. But I think it is highly impractical or improbable that the colonial rulers can repay, because it's also about how is it possible, how can this thing is possible. It's more of a political issue rather than thing. It would definitely, I mean, if that is the case, I think India would be far richer than what it is. But I think depending on reparations from British for what the East India Company and subsequently the British government did, we cannot depend our economy. I think we need to focus more on what we are and what we need to do now. But it's interesting to note that a lot of resources from India has gone out of India because the British ruled for their profit, and there was a lot of pillage, a lot of harrying, a lot of depredations. As Shashi Tharoor really says, that the British put India's economy under the wheels of the bus, and India did miss the bus. So the economy completely drained down. For example, if you look at the mills, the cotton mills of India, the lot of exports happened from India abroad, and India again was forced to buy from the British company. So an interesting anecdote here I want to share is, I don't know if people know that there are several British mills still running in India. One such mill is in Gokak, which is in Karnataka, North Karnataka, Belgaum district, wherein at one point during the British time, they manufactured a lot of cotton material which was exported back to London, and then it was relabeled and then again sent back to the colonies, and people preferred buying these British products, especially the elite class in India preferred buying these elite products. So we were actually forced to buy, and we paid for our own oppression. That's what Dr. Shashi Tharoor says. So bringing back reparations is impossible, highly impossible, but maybe what we can expect is a moral apology for being oppressed for several decades, for more than 2 centuries. But that is what we can expect. And today the news is that London is out, the UK is out of Brexit, so which they're happy about. So I don't think that is possible in terms of paying money. Moral apology is what we can get. Any other questions? Anybody else?
Yeah. Basant, thank you so much. I have been listening to the entire session. It was really very informative, and you have spoken so well.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
I heard some students' voice there. Are you planning to ask a question?
No.
Okay. So it's a pleasure always listening to you, Vasant.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Swami, are you there? Great, wonderful. So on the behalf of the entire department, yes, Swami. So on the behalf of the entire department, we deem it a great pleasure to have you for the session, and a heartfelt thanks to you, Vasant, for taking out time and talking to our students today. I could see the session was very interesting. The kind of questions which came up. So it's really nice that students are somewhere keeping themselves up to date. And students continue reading, continue asking questions, because when experts like Vasant, they come here and talk to you, I think you should try to gain as much knowledge from their sessions possible. So thank you so much, Vasant.
Thanks a lot.